ESPN updated its post-spring rankings. So they kind of did a post-spring one already where it was closer, but now with the transfer portal window and everything, they wanted to update their rankings once again. Georgia was ranked that #1 team back a few months ago. Let's look at this. Georgia's still #1 according to ESPN. This is Mark Schlabach who put this article together, one of the college football insiders that they have working on all of this. They've been producing a ton of content, a lot of predictions, a lot of, hey, top 10 this, top 10 this. Georgia, all over the place in terms of that. And in terms of their total rankings, they have the Georgia Bulldogs #1 overall. I'll read what they had to say about the Dogs. Just kind of looking through this, I'm going to discuss kind of how I feel about some of these teams towards the top and what we know about them after spring, right? That's kind of the point of this conversation. They've got Ohio State 2, Texas #3, Oregon 4. That largely stays the same, that top 4. But they got Notre Dame 5, Ole Miss 6, Bama 7, Missouri 8, Utah 9, Michigan 10. That's an interesting top 10. Let's get into the top 10 here in just a second, and then I'll go on and talk about some other teams outside the top 10, some other teams in the league like Tennessee, Oklahoma. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about post-spring college football rankings that ESPN has now put out, and they put it out for me to dissect and for me to talk about and break down. I think, look, I understand. I've seen post-spring rankings that have Georgia #1. I've seen post-spring and pre-spring, all of that have Ohio State #1. I think that I have yet to see any sort of list or ranking that doesn't have one of those two teams at the top of college football heading into 2024. And those most common 3 and 4s have been Texas and Oregon. So one new SEC team, one old SEC team, one old Big Ten team, and one new Big Ten team are the teams that people are gravitating towards, saying, hey, we think that they're going to be the best in college football. This is what ESPN, and if it's gibberish, I will BS my way through it. But this is what they had to say. With a schedule that includes a non-conference opener against Clemson and Atlanta, and SEC road games at Kentucky, Bama, Ole Miss, Texas, a 4th straight unbeaten regular season might be asking a bit much of the Bulldogs. It is asking much. It's totally it's on the table, though. But there's a reason Coach Kirby Smart's program won back-to-back college football playoff national titles in 2021 and 22, and 46 of its past 48 games. Quarterback Carson Beck is primed for a big season, and he'll be surrounded by plenty of playmakers and what should be one of the sport's best offensive lines. I think it will be sport's best offensive line. I talked about how good I think that this offense is going to be in a video yesterday. I think that 45 points per game is something that's totally in the cards for Georgia. I think that that's possible. They've been teetering around that 40-point mark. They hit 41.1 a couple of years ago. I think that this Georgia offense is very, very good. 45 is in question. LSU's team just did that a year ago. I know they had the Heisman winner, but Georgia's now projected to have the Heisman winner. If they can have that production on offense, we're talking about a 45-point per game offense. ESPN goes on to say replacements will have to be made and identified on the interior defensive line and in the secondary, but that hasn't been a problem in recent past. It hasn't been super peachy. Michael Williams, who is going to play more outside linebacker this season, looks ready to break out as a pass rusher. He had very similar. His freshman season was a little bit better than his sophomore season. He is a guy that's expected to break out. This is a guy that is projected to be a first-round pick next April. Michael Williams is a guy that's projected to be one of the first edge rushers off the board. Some of those early projections get taken away from when you see someone's ranking in recruiting on 24/7 or on 3 or whoever it is that you like to look at. Right? You see Michael Williams was a top 5 prospect. You see a little bit of production in college. Immediately, people are going to throw him in there as a first-round prospect. He is one. He needs to play like it if he wants to actually get taken there. Maybe a little bit of a call out on Michael Williams. It's go time, Michael. You can make a ton of money this season. Georgia is stacked at linebacker, true, and brings back safety Malachi Starks, one of the best players in college football. So that's what they said about Georgia. Nothing new. It's pretty much just a synopsis of what they've got going on. I think what's interesting is that ESPN was a little bit over Ohio State. And then you see all of a sudden Carson Beck's odds for Heisman. All of a sudden he is the sole odds. And he's not fighting with Quinn Ewers anymore. Georgia kind of had the best odds. Something went on towards the end of the spring that made people slightly more comfortable in Georgia than it did in Ohio State. What could it be? All we've seen is positive things about Ohio State. Oh, this guy got his black stripe removed, right? Ohio State, when you first get there, you got to wear a black stripe. You got to earn it in practice to get it removed. And we're seeing, like, in record time, some of these guys are removing their black stripes. Quinshon Judkins, Jeremiah Smith, the freshman, Will Howard, the quarterback, Ryan Julian Sain, the quarterback. These guys have been removing their black stripes early. Why? That's one of the things we saw in spring. Why is Georgia ranked number 1? I think that the fact that there was even a hint of a quarterback battle was not boding well for Ohio State in terms of how people feel about them. When you think about, hey, we brought in Will Howard. You went and got a guy that's had serious experience in college football at the Power 5 level. You expect him to most likely just come in and win that job and look like he's going to win it in a big way and take this offense to another step. Can you take it to another step that CJ Stroud had it, that Justin Fields had it? I don't know. But they're stacked. And if the trigger man is really, really good like those guys were, then we are talking about a ridiculous offense. I'm looking to see if they said anything outlandish about Ohio State. And it's not. It's all true. The fact that they gained all those guys. The quarterback situation is where Georgia has them beat. And they haven't beaten a couple of other spots. That's just the one that people are going to highlight. Texas and Oregon. Excuse me. I've been struggling with this one. Texas and Oregon at those 3 and 4 spots. I think that's fine. They're interchangeable to me. I probably lean Texas just because of Quinn Ewers. It's the same kind of concept. Stability at quarterback, stability in coaching. I think that Texas brings back a lot. They lost some NFL production, but they filled some of that. And I just this is going to be a really good Texas football team. My thing with Oregon is, Bo Nix was pretty good as a transfer for the Ducks, right? Had some time to acclimate it. Had some time, 2 years. Are we expecting Dylan Gabriel, who has been in college football for a long time and has been good? Are we really expecting Dylan Gabriel to come in and run an offense that's just as good? Right? You're essentially replacing Troy Franklin and Bo Nix with Evan Stewart and Dylan Gabriel. Evan Stewart transferred from Texas A&M. Dylan Gabriel, most recently coming from Oklahoma. I don't expect it to be quite as good. This was a team that lost to Washington twice. Those were the blemishes on their schedule a year ago. They were tight games. They were really, we're talking about within a touchdown each of those games of going to play for, I believe that the Big Ten Championship was also close. I'm blanking on the score on the top of my head. But going and playing in the college football playoff. This is a team that was teetering on that. I don't view them as highly just because I think that turnover is hard to recuperate in one off season. When you look outside the top 5, they've got a couple more SEC teams at that 6, 7, and 8 range. Or you look outside the top 4, they've got Notre Dame in there. I do think Notre Dame has a good shot to make the college football playoff. They're not going to make it as a bye. Can they make it in there somewhere in that 5 to 12 range? Certainly possible. Riley Leonard was one of the hotter names in the transfer portal market, a quarterback who played well when he was out there for Duke last year, obviously dealt with injuries. I do think that this Notre Dame situation is overrated, in my opinion. I don't think it's number 5 overall good when you lose what you did on the offensive line and you've got to start over with some new guys. I don't love that. The Ole Miss, Bama, Missouri stretch of the top 10 is interesting to me. I think that Ole Miss is kind of viewed as that team that if people were making bets, who's going to be the first new team in the college football playoff this year, Ole Miss is a popular bet for that. They don't have a super tough schedule. They've got talent. They went and got some defensive talent in the transfer portal from Florida and from A&M and they went and got Anton Wells from South Carolina. So they added another weapon, even though you lose a huge weapon in Quinshon Judkins, longtime quarterback in Jackson Dart. Ole Miss, I do think will probably drop that game to Georgia. We are looking at what I believe is probably a playoff team. And I think that Alabama and Missouri are subject to be playoff teams too. All of these teams can really kind of teeter around 10-2 and make the SEC very interesting. I think with Missouri, can they be as good on defense as they were? On offense, I think they'll be similar as long as they can run the football without Cody Schrader. They're a very good running back from the last couple of years. As long as they can do that really well, and play tough defense. That passing game is going to be good between Brady Cook and Luther Burden. They're going to be good at that spot. With Alabama, there are a lot of question marks. Michigan, but then you get to the point where it's like, okay, well, Michigan's taking a big step back. They've got them at number 10. They got Florida State at 11. I don't see how that situation's any better than it was a year ago. I think they take a step back. Penn State, I think, takes a step sideways. I don't really know what to think about that. I know I'm not going into detail. I'm just kind of flying through some of these. I believe LSU will take a step back. Tennessee could take a step forward. I think Clemson is going to be taking a sideways step. So in this 12-team pool, I don't really see there being 12 legit teams. I see there being a handful. And most of them are coming out of the SEC right now. Thanks for watching.